don't hear any problems. So here's some reasons that we feel as advocates that Medicaid reform should not be expanded. I just spoke about the consumers are suffering under reform. So their providers are dropping out, especially with the mentally ill population. For many people, this has been a problem. But providers, where they, under Medipass, they only had to bill one agency. You know, it's like, this is the Medicaid bill, it's ACA, pay it. They now have like 16 or 17 plans for all of their patients, and I think there's such thing as too much choice. And they're just dropping out because the caseload is too much, the paperwork is too much. They used to have one big bureaucracy, now they have 17. And for them, as I say, the mentally ill, this is just so difficult for them to have to switch doctors and drugs. I talked about the preferred drug list. You know, they try and choose the plan where their medications are going to be on it, and they don't have to try a generic first, because all the drugs should be covered, but on the preferred drug list, you've got one that you're not going to have to jump through hoops to get. And so, you know, if there's a stabilization drug that is working for them, they don't want to go back and use something that wasn't. So that's been a real problem for them. The pre-authorization requirements are, although the plans are still required to offer the same types of services, they can still, you know, try and get tons of pre-authorizations. So that's one of the major reasons, especially for the impetus, of course, as I mentioned, for Medicaid reform was that the spending was out of control. We've done some studies on this, and what the Florida state had originally said to the federal government, to CMS, of how much money they were going to be spending on Medicaid. We've studied this, and we found that it's actually going to be $38 billion than what they had projected. So they said they were going to spend $38 billion on Medicaid when the projections now are showing that it's much, much lower. So the numbers were inflated to begin with. So reform's not saving the state money. This is really difficult, or it's not saving the state significant amounts of money. This is a really difficult argument to make because a lot of the data is just not there. But what we've been able to surmise from my policy director and others is that the Medicaid spending per person in the reform counties was only 2% less than in the rest of Medicaid. And this is 2 years into the pilot. But when you think about the fact that people aren't getting services, it's really a bad deal for the taxpayers. And I think one of the reasons that spending is less is simply that people are having a difficult time getting services anyway. So one of the issues was transportation, where Medicaid would pay for transportation to and from the doctor, and it's a difficult system. People had sort of figured it out. But now, like, the cab drivers and people that pick you up have 17 different plans that will pay for a ride, and people just aren't even getting to their doctor's appointments. So we think they might even just be saving money on little things like that. We're already threatening to pull out of the pilot. They promised to increase competition, and we've already seen 3 HMOs pull out. We're not really even measuring if people are getting healthier or if people are doing better on Medicaid reform. It was supposed to focus on public reporting of where our taxpayer dollars are going, because before, with Medipass, they were going to the providers. Now they're going to insurance companies, although other types of Medicaid. But we want to see, how many doctors' visits are certain populations actually getting? What are the drugs that they're getting? We're not getting access to that information. Some of the studies have shown, I keep talking about 17 different plans, but if you think about, a chart of 17 different insurance plans. I mean, my employer only had like 2 or 3 to choose from, and it was confusing. And these are children, elderly, disabled, vulnerable people for a lot of them. And it's like, well, I don't even know where to begin. Which plan do I pick? I'm going to pick the one that my doctor's on. Another thing that's going on is that last session they passed legislation, the Florida legislature passed legislation that said in all of the other counties, and there are 62 counties where there are more than 2 Medicaid managed care organizations, more than 2 HMOs, anybody in Medipass will automatically be assigned to one of these HMOs. They opt out of it. So there's some backdoor efforts to put people into managed care, although they still don't have the federal waiver kind of restrictions on it. You're just seeing that in the state. I mean, people are just moving more and more to managed care. So So what can we do? We have a listserv. Visit your lawmakers. Representative Schwartz is here today, and I think she's probably the expert right now on this issue. But we need a lot more champions, and it's great because she's from this area. But you've got a lot of new legislators that don't know anything about this. And then, of course, writing to your editor, especially if you're seeing this in your own practice or in your own job. And then alternatives discussion is we keep talking about the problems, and Medicaid itself has problems before reform, and that's what the people that really support this program will say. And so, as advocates, we're working with other statewide groups and local groups like the AARP and Florida Legal Services and the Center for Independent Living and others to come up with, if Medicaid reform isn't the answer, what is? So we'll have opportunities to do that as well.
Our lobbyist is going to focus on the long-term diversion program more again. It's going to focus on home and community-based waiver services, which we feel are very much lacking here in Florida. And how we do it, and how I would hope that you guys would do it, is we just go and visit our legislators when they're at home. I mean, you can easily go on www.flsenate.gov, standing for FloridaSenate.gov, and find your legislators. And you put in your zip code, either of your zip code of where you live or your zip code of where your office is, and it'll give you the list of legislators that are yours. And you should go visit them. They need to be educated. We have one third of the Florida state legislators for next session are new. 1/3 are green. They have no idea. They don't know what Medicaid is. They don't know what long-term diversion is. They don't know what home and community-based waiver services. They don't know who the nursing homes are. They don't know what care managers are. They just don't know what we do. They don't even know what elder law attorneys are, a lot of them. I mean, I've been doing my damnedest to make sure they know who I am, but, it's going to take a lot more work. And all of us in the elder law field, I think, to band together.
I'm working with both berry products, but it used to be work with long-term care. So even though in this new company, we are expecting to see, what's happened with all those patients, we never see that kind of movement. I'm talking about our business. Here is representative from facilities who has contract with long-term care, adult daycares who has contract with long-term care. So, and we research was going on, and many people receive denials.
And I have 100% acceptance rate. So that's the first time hearing that people are receiving denials that they shouldn't be receiving. I don't know how to answer that question other than, and I'm going to call on you in 1 second. Other than if they're receiving denials that they shouldn't be receiving, then they should march themselves right down to that DCF office, because most of the denials are occurring on the financial side. Now we don't have person-to-person interviews anymore. Everything is done online, but you can request and insist on a person-to-person interview. So I guess my advocacy tip would be march yourself right to Lake Worth if you're Palm Beach County, or down in Broward County, and go and get an answer, because they have to give you a specific reason for the denial, and they need to send you a paperwork and saying what they're missing and what they need in order to complete the application. So that would be my advocacy tip.
Is that you have to request an approval. I mean, my father-in-law we applied the day that he moved into an ALF, and then every couple of weeks or a month would go by, and I'd call, and they'd say, oh, he's on the list. And so then today, you said, there's no right today, and I went in and I said, and my financial specialist says, there is no waiting list anymore. I said, well, then you call up Barbara at CARES and find out what's going on. And I got a message 2 hours later saying, oh, he's approved.
When I'm meeting with elder law clients all the time, I say, that old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Be annoying. Be a squeaky wheel. March yourself down there. Do whatever you need to do. You've got to be an advocate. You do. And that's another reason why we had this session on public policy and advocacy, because it's an integral part of what we do. But you are constantly, at least I am constantly, faced with a lot of complacency. And people just don't think that their 10-minute meeting or 20-minute meeting, even with a staff person, is going to make a difference. But the fact of the matter is that it does. It makes a huge amount of difference, especially if you go to someone who you are their constituent. I mean, they're all about getting reelected. I think that, no, just say, well, I understand you're going to research it more, but what's your gut position on it? Try and nail them down. That's what you want to do, because then you want to go back to them and say, remember when I met with you, and I'm not being a lawyer here, right? Remember when I met you on this day, on this time, and I looked you in the eye and you told me that your position is, well, how come your record of voting is X, Y, and Z? So yeah, we need to have them on our sides, we need to make them accountable, and we need to advocate. Then you could spend a little bit extra and help contribute to the state's healthcare costs and programs like S-CHIP and Kid Care and Medicaid that we desperately need. So, go on the website, learn more about it, and then when you do meet with your legislators, say, hey, I think that is a really good idea. We can raise some really good money if we increase cigarette tax. And, say, what do you think? And don't ever leave here's another tip for me. Never leave a legislator meeting without saying, what's your position on that? And people, and for those of you who are smokers in the room, I'm not pointing, I'm not picking on you. I just have to say that that's the study, that's what it shows, that their health. So if you're going to spend, I don't even know how much it is now, it's usually the day before that you're going to come, and you can speak in front of room load of people. I mean, there's typically a lot of people, and if you say something that resonates with the group, you have clapping and and they kind of look silly if they, you want them to put an answer on the record. What are you going to do about the long-term diversion program? What are you going to do about the cigarette tax? Just briefly, I want to tell you quickly about the cigarette tax from my mouth and not from Laura, since her organization is probably the biggest proponent of it. The cigarette tax, I thought, was an ingenious idea. Putting an extra tax on people who buy cigarettes to fund Medicaid or diversion.
What's great is meet with them in the districts and bring more than one person. And we all have busy lives and we have tons of things to do. But I think if we could collaborate on these legislative visits, and they have legislative delegations, I think it's good to work as a team on this. But with
let me interrupt you. Do you guys know what the delegation is? The delegations are awesome. They are set up in a central location. So there's typically, for Palm Beach County, for instance, there's a South County, a Main County, and North County. Broward typically just has, I think, an East Broward and a West Broward. And they have all of the legislators from that area, from Palm Beach County, let's say, would be sitting up in front of the room. Huge, all of them, really. I mean, and then you register, and we do. Anybody else have anything that they're doing? What about the Alzheimer's?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm Lynn Barrow, and I'm privileged to be in a brand new, absolutely spanking new position in advocacy public policy in the Southeast Florida chapter. At this point, I don't have a lot to share because of that.
Okay.
But I had volunteered for years and been up to Tallahassee and Washington. And last year, there were no finances to go up to Tallahassee.